Mine was depth. Sometimes just hitting the sides isn't good enough. You got to get all the way down to the bottom of the depth chart to make sure that what you're doing is what needs to be done. And so unspectacular for sure, workmanlike. Feel free to add all of those, but it was a team that knows who they are, and they needed depth. They didn't need home run hits. They needed singles, and I think that's what they did.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a good analysis of both of you. I don't think it's obviously, when you lack day one, a day one pick, and then you don't pick until the 60s, especially in a draft class that's not really. It's we'll see after the fact. We say it's a weak draft class. We could have multiple all pros out of this class. We'll see, but generally speaking, consensus says it's not a great draft class. And then your first pick's not till 66. And so you're going to just have to find guys that work best for your scheme. I think what they did was what Chris said. They bolstered the rooms that they felt like they needed more depth in. I'm glad that they addressed the positions that they did. I think they were all areas of need, at least to a degree. So I'm glad that they went with that approach. It felt, I wasn't sure if we were going to get more of a best player available kind of draft or more of a need draft. It feels like they, I think it's probably always some sort of combination of the two, right? You're assessing what you need, but also taking if there's someone there that you love, you're going to take the person that you love.
Yeah, you're not going to take four punters if they're
right.
It's what is it? Best player available at a position of need.
Right.
I think it's best player available within reason. So
sure.
I hate your answer.
Okay, well, suck it. I don't care. I think one of the things that because they had a pick in the second round, but ended up trading back with the Bills to pick up more draft capital, which is great because I think they got wiped out in the second round. I think, Ben Albright said, they're very interested in Josiah Trotter. I think Max Clare would have been a pick, and he went right before their pick.
Yeah.
Anthony Hill,
right?
Yeah, Golday, Anthony Hill. All those linebackers tended to go right before their pick. So I think they had
and several tight ends.
Yeah, and I think
and a few running back, right? Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, but I think they did a nice job like assessing the board. Okay, the guys that we like are gone. Let's trade down and get some more value. So I think that was a well executed move in the draft. So for what?
Yeah, I mean, just not losing your marbles, right? I mean, you hit it. So Jacob Rodriguez, Jeremiah Trotter, Jay Golday.
First off, it's Josiah Trotter. Get it?
Josiah.
Right.
My bad. Sorry. Yep. You're right. Right. If you're gonna say his name, say it correctly. And then Anthony Hill Jr. So all of them, a couple before. You have Max Clare going. You have Nate Borger, tight end out of.
I don't think he was on the
Texas A&M. Yeah, that guy. So a couple tight ends go off the board. You had a bunch of D linemen, Caden McDonald, Christian Miller, etc. And so it really was a run on Lee Miller, or Lee Hunter, sorry, for guys that you could use, and then even Emmanuel McNeil Warren, who I thought would have been fun for this team, and so it really was like that entire round, outside of a handful of picks, were all guys that I think if they would have drafted them, we would have been like, oh yeah, that's good pick, all over the place. So we had this debate earlier on whether or not you can. And we had this debate. We broached the subject whether or not you can include Jalen Waddle in your in your
draft class,
grade, right? Your draft class. And I think for them they did, right? Because they didn't try and go for another home run, maybe a high upside, low floor kind of guy, and then being able to trade back. They also didn't feel the pressure of we got to go get someone. They felt like their guys were off the board, and then when that's the case, make the smart decision to gain some capital, which benefited earlier in getting Jolie. So I thought they worked the board well. I do think in all, and you said this in some side conversations, JT, of like they didn't have enough draft capital to have an impactful draft. Like their picks are too late to expect that you're going to get whatever, or, you're going to get impact players that will be pushing for starting roles. So it's like this culmination of you finally have a really good team that has some, some real meat to it, depth to it, that there was nobody, probably even at 30, that you were going to be able to draft that was a for sure day one starter.
Right.
And so then when that pick goes out the window, you're picking at 62. I mean, that likelihood of that being an impactful player is infinitely further down. And especially when the guys that you or positions that you could have looked at to come contribute early got gutted, for 20 picks before you, and you didn't have a ton of capital to move up in the second round. Right. And then again, for what? For maybe a guy that's going to contribute. There's no guarantee for sure that CJ Allen or Golday or Josiah, that any of them are starting day one anyway. So then you're going to have that extra capital for a guy being your third linebacker. I just think it was an odd spot to be in. And I think every team, you kind of hope that your team's there. Like, we're so good, we don't need crap. But as a fan of the draft, that sucked.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, like we're enjoying watching other people draft because they're the names of the guys that we know, and that's not necessarily what our guys are getting.
Yeah, but sometimes those drafts are needed where you, again, in my head, you don't need to swing for the fences every single time. Sometimes hitting a single and a double.
You shouldn't. I mean, that's you shouldn't, right? Like, you shouldn't be just drafting for, like, if this guy hits, like, at some point you got to draft guys that you think are just good football players.
Right.
But have a role, that you have a vision that can contribute.
But even the guys that you do pick, I think, again, if you hit a double, that's a good draft pick. If you hit a single, that's a good draft pick. Sure. That was more my mentality. I don't think you need
and I like that. I think it's great. Like, the assumption is that you're going to get this perennial all-pro with every pick. And to be able to forecast how a human being's going to do over it, it's hard enough. And so, I think having appropriate expectations for, like, what's a win,
right?
Like, what to expect. I think we'll probably talk about that ad nauseum a little bit too, of, what are you getting and what was your objective? They got guys that they feel can either be a part of the immediate plan, part of next plan, insurance, so you're not paying out the wazoo because we can't keep paying everybody. You got to get guys that maybe take a little bit longer to develop, but at a position that you're forecasting some turnover or some crunches when it comes to the salary cap. So I think that's a great point. Great pointers.
Do we have favorite picks of the Broncos?
Yeah.
JT, shoot, let's go.
I think I'm going to go with Jolly. I think that I think it's a position that we needed to get more depth, tight end. I think that he is an underrated playmaker. I think he's a guy that actually runs pretty good routes for a tight end. I think he was maybe a little overlooked, maybe because he's not as strong in the run game, or in the blocking game. But he's shown that he can line up and block. At least he's a willing blocker. I think he's a guy that you can carve out a role for. He may not beat out anyone this year. He may not beat out Troutman or Ingram this year, but a guy that you can develop. And I think that that's what you're looking for in this draft, is like, who has traits that we like, who has upside that we think is worth, the juice is worth the squeeze. I think Jolly's one of those guys that, you get him in the right situation around the right guys, he can develop into a good red zone option. He can develop into a guy that you can put out there every down, or any down, and it's not going to disrupt your game plan per se. He's not just going to be a tight end that can only run routes and you can't count on him in the run game. So he's probably my favorite pick value wise. I just thought, I thought this is a guy you'd get third round, second or fourth round at the latest, and to get him in the fifth round seems like a bit of a steal.
Nick, who you got?
I like that. I feel like now I am not prepared to the level that you were.
Would you like me to go?
Nick, I would like you to go because I want to hear what you say, but that was mumbo jumbo. But I would like you to go.
Okay. Well, Red Murdoch is the guy that I am super excited about. I think he's from Buffalo. He's the linebacker that we got he's Mr. Irrelevant in that seventh round. I thought he was going to be a fourth and fifth round pick. I love his physical nature. He plays with a tenacity and a nastiness that I think your linebacker room needs to have as a prerequisite. He is not the most athletic linebacker you'll ever see, nor does he have the cleanest bill of health that you'll ever see. But again, I think he's just a football player. He's an instinctual, physical linebacker that I think, again, raises the floor of that room, and wouldn't be surprised if he makes the 53. So I'm calling it now. Red Murdoch makes the 53.
I like it.
Ooh, I do like that. All right. So I think just to be able to look at it, disregard that one thing up there that's not accurate, but it's interesting because it's like I like all of those. I think my favorite now, I feel like I had different opinion during the draft. I think during the draft, Justin Joly was my favorite just because, to be honest, it's the guy I put the most work into looking at, and I thought that was a good fit and a potential matchup. But I think Jonah Coleman is my favorite, and here's why: because I think he's a Sean Payton fit. So not only is he he's tough, he gets the yards, he's shown versatility, to come in with the humility and pride in his blocking and understanding, like, for me to be a good pro and a 3-down back, I got to put my face in that other guy's chest. And, he makes $60 million. I'm going to make $1 million. I understand. Like, I get it. For a 22-year-old kid to say that and understand that, exhibit it in college, right? It's not something that he's doing now to kind of like hang in the league. He's been doing it. So he's been bought in for what that looks like. And then watching him play a little bit more, it's kind of like CJ Anderson-ish for me, like real agile, smart, patient runner who is very difficult to tackle. He's not going to break a 70-yard run, but he's going to get a bunch of 20 to 30-yard runs. And 2 years ago, the Broncos had one run of plus 21 yards by a running back, and that was Tyler Bidet, like towards the end against Buffalo, right? Like that was just it was hard to be able to see how that could be. And then you add him to that room where you have J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, and I think you have a really good mix of skill sets, with Jonah Coleman being kind of a blend of both. And then you kind of have the guys that are really, really good at their particular thing on the other ends. He's kind of the bridge. And so it wasn't a 6'2", 240-pound running back that I was, for some reason, the archetype of what would have been cool. But I think he is a better pick than like Mike Washington. The fumbles and ball security, I couldn't get over it. I know JT, you had brought it up about just like, you don't see many guys stop fumbling. It's like to have, it's like having a bad back. You never used to have a bad back. You either do or you didn't. And so he's my favorite. I'm really excited for what he brings. I also think the energy that he has, the mental fortitude, his concept and understanding of team, and the humility with picking up blitzes. I think he's going to be a guy that, at best is a guy that is a long-term replacement for J.K. Dobbins. At worst, I feel like he's going to be a good complementary back that hangs around this team for the next 4, 5, 6 years. And we saw with JK going down, like you need guys that can get the job done. And I have a lot of faith that he'll be that guy.
Yeah. I think an underrated piece of that is the pass pro. I think that is the key for rookie running backs making impacts early. A lot of times coaches are not comfortable putting, $100 million quarterbacks next to a running back who can't block. Or pick up blitzers. So Jonah Coleman was by far the best at that in the draft. So again, more of a avenue for him to take is to contribute early. So I
mean, I heard Benny Fowler talking about it. He played early, or he played with Saquon early in Saquon's career, and talked about how that was really hard for him. He wasn't very good at it. He got exploited early in his career and had to really make adjustments to be a guy that is 2,000-yard back and all of that kind of stuff. And so I think hopefully Broncos country can get excited about that, because that isn't a desirable aspect of the job, period. And probably for most, and the willingness to go do a thing that maybe you shouldn't be getting paid for, or that's not all the stuff that I think people think all the time, or could. And a guy understanding, not only being willing it, but takes pride in it. Right? The clip of him lighting up Sonny Styles in pass pro, get top 10 pick, freak athlete, all the stuff, and 5'9", 229-pound bowling ball, won that battle and won it significantly. I think it's just a nice visual of like, you got a dog, and this team kind of needs a few more of those of, you can rely on me. I'm gonna come in with attitude and whatever it takes.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Coleman pick. That was like my worst case scenario, right? We talked about it the last week or 2 weeks ago. Like I didn't want Coleman in the second. I just thought that that was like one of my worst case scenarios, just because I didn't think the value was there to take him that early. Now the fact that he fell to the fourth makes it a lot more tolerable for me. He's still a guy that, I have doubts about his ability to burst out of the backfield, but like you said, there's toughness, there's runs, yards after contact. He has good contact balance, like you said. He's good in pass pro. There's definitely things to love about that pick, and especially in the fourth round. Bentley too is one that I'm interested in. I think I'm interested in both the tight ends. Bentley is just more. Yeah. I think you're more interested in the traits with Bentley. I think he had a RAS score of over 9.2 or something, 9.25, something like that. So there's obviously, from an athletic standpoint, he's interesting. Probably more of a pass catcher, just not a lot of experience, or not a lot of utilization, some injuries, but a guy that had a productive year last year. We'll see if that's something that he can kind of continue to grow on. So ultimately, I think that they did a nice job kind of rounding out the roster. At the end of the day, it's not going to be the sexiest draft that the Broncos ever had. But I think, they knew what the goal was. They knew what the job was when they got into the war room, and they stuck to the script, which is just, get guys you can develop, get guys that, in a pinch, if you really need to move someone up and have someone in rotation, you have options. And I think that's what they did. So ultimately, I'm fairly satisfied. Obviously, it's not, like you said, not splashy, but if we're counting Jalen Waddle, which is debatable, I think that it's, there's a piece that coming away with that additional piece means something.
I think it's interesting because I think at the very worst, picks like Jolie and Bentley and Coleman raise, at least push, Krull and Adkins to play up to a better level, because the cream's going to rise. So, your job's on notice, so you better come with it. Come come training camp, you better come with it, or else we're going to put these guys in, and you're going to be left on the outside looking in. So,
competition, right? This is the ultimate meritocracy game for the most part, right? They are going to play the best players, and it comes to fruition all the time. If you get out there and make them notice you're going to get PT, and you want guys to feel in danger of losing their gig, right? That you don't want to be comfortable, and if you're not playing well, we have someone else to do it. You have to be willing to go give your A+ all of the time. That's what good teams have. And it's been a long time, I think, since the Broncos have been able to attack a draft like this, where you're not looking for an immediate impact player. Last year was a little bit with Jahdae Barron, right? Like really probably taking the BPA on your board in a sense of not needing him. And what, good teams just stack good players. And this one, I think, was the next level of it of, we have a type now, and who are we going to go get that fits the type, both on the field and in the locker room. It talked about the leadership and guys who have good reputations and were captains, and really continuing to build off that. I actually really like the Bentley pick more than I think he's a better blocker than maybe he gets some credit for.
Nope.
No,
sorry. I'm squashing this narrative right now. He is a work in progress as a blocker. Go watch the Texas.
They're all a work in progress.
No. Bentley is a work in progress. He was getting blown up by linebackers in the Texas Tech game.
Interesting.
And he also wandered off in run blocking, didn't know who to block. He is a work in progress.
Oh, I mean, he's a 7th round pick. Like,
and that's fine, but like, I don't want to hear the narrative of this guy can come in and block because he can't. He's not blocking.
No, you know what? I guarantee the first snap he comes in, he doesn't catch the ball, he blocks.
Well, that's awesome. But again, I want to
Hey, Jeff Legwold, when run blocking, he plays with good technique, though. Okay, he's not able to move defenders. He does neutralize and redirect them.
Oh, are we just reading draft reports? Because
I'm telling you that's what I noted it when I was like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't before the draft. I wasn't watching a ton of Dallin Bentley tape. I just getting a guy in the 200 and whatever's 50s. I think it's a guy that has a shot to be able to build. Like Adam Troutman isn't a behemoth, and I think, to be honest, most tight ends aren't road graders, right? They are good enoughers in today's NFL, and I think in the end, he maybe even more than Joe Lee. I think Joe Lee can be good in space blocking. I don't know if he'll be good point of attack. I don't know that Dallin Bentley will be really good point of attack, but I think he's going to be functional enough to be a guy that you can leave on the field in both. But I think that there's more to him in being a good blocker than there's not. I would say that he is not. I wouldn't put him in there on a crucial 3rd and 1 right now. That's for sure. But I think he's got some stuff to him to be a good blocker with the appropriate coaching.
And I'm with that.
Okay,
but
good.
There's this narrative.
No.
There is a narrative in Broncos country that is like, no, this guy is going to come in and be, an F tight end. We're going to put him on line. He's going to be blocking.
Like,
and I'm like,
right now,
he can play in line, and you like his aggressiveness and you like his body type for becoming a good blocker, but he's not there yet. So let's stop with he's a good blocker, and just because he's better than Joe Lee at blocking doesn't make him a good blocker. They still got stuff to work on. So
yeah, that's fair.
Okay,
that's
all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, no, that's good.
Okay. Do we want to transition to AFC West, or do we want to give favorite draft classes and least favorite draft classes?
Let's do the AFC West first, and then we'll go out to the masses.
Love it.
So the masses.
Speaking of the dogs, the dredges of society, the Raiders and the Chiefs both picked in the top 10. What'd you think of their draft classes, boys?
I like the Raiders more than I like the Chiefs. I think a lot of people like the Chiefs draft class. I think it's okay.
I'm one of them.
I don't love it, to be honest. I like it. I don't love it. I think that they took areas of need, which I think is good, and they got probably guys that are good scheme fits. I think Mansour Delane, obviously with all the concerns with McCoy's knee, he was easily the number 1 CB in this class, and I think he'll be a starting CB, for this team. I think he'll be good. Woods, I think, is interesting. It's a good scheme fit, but he didn't have the production that he had 2 years ago. Yep. I think that's a risk potentially to take him in the first round to move up to get him. R. Mason Thomas is a guy that I think plays with a good motor. I think it can be a productive pass rusher, but I don't think, from an athletic standpoint, that he's anything special per se. I just think that there were a lot of picks and Emmett Johnson, I'm just not as high on as some of the other guys. I think he's a guy who can be effective in the run game for them, but I don't know that he's going to be a game changer for him. So I think there's a lot of question marks there outside of Delane. And so I like the guys ultimately for what they do, but I don't know that they're going to pan out to be anything special for them. So I think it's a wait and see with them.
What'd you like about the Raiders?
I just think that they did a good job identifying talent. Like, I think obviously you need a quarterback. You went and got your quarterback of the future. Traden Stukes is a guy that I really liked at safety. I think he, as an athlete, is really special. He's a good football player. I think he brings an edge that team needs. Jermon McCoy, I think the value was there, obviously to take a risk, whether he ends up being a guy who can play in the league for a long time or not. He's obviously got some skills and he's healthy right now. So we'll see, whatever this bone plug issue is with the knee, if it's something that they can, which I heard actually the doctor who specializes in the surgery is the Cowboys doctor. We'll see what that ends up looking like for him. But I think it's just a good value pick there. Mike Washington Jr. is a guy that, again, like I'm not as in love with as you were, Chris, but I think he's obviously a good athlete. He's got to work on ball security, but he's at that pick at 122 is a good draft pick. I just think they did a good job identifying upside and weren't afraid to take some risks that weren't sometimes when they take risks, they're reaching, and I don't feel like they reached for any of these picks, which I think is a big thing for this franchise to just kind of identify what they need, identify guys that are good football players, and take them where they're, presumably valued.
What about Nick? What about you, homie?
Yeah, I like the Chiefs draft more than the Raiders draft. That said, is Delane?
I think part of sorry, not to interrupt you. I think part of what I didn't like about the Chiefs draft is that you trade McDuffie and then you just go replace him. And I get it, like from a standpoint, like you need a cornerback and you also need to cut costs with McDuffie. But it just felt like, just like taking out a puzzle piece and just fit a new one in there, maybe forcing it a little bit. But sorry,
yeah. 100%. So instead of keeping the known and paying the known, you draft a young unknown. So I think Delane's good, but then to trade up to go get your guy, sure.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a big enough fan of his to feel like that was the move. Peter Woods concerns me, just the fact of, projected top 10 pick for like 2 years and then fell off the planet this year. With a talented group around him, it wasn't like he didn't have other guys that are good at football around him. Or Mason Thomas, I think he's a one-trick pony right now. He's just not that big. And so we said the same thing about a fellow Sooner alum and Nick Benito. And so that's there. I do like Jaden Kennedy. I think he's a good corner play, especially in the 4th round.
Yeah.
Not a fan of Emmett Johnson. I thought he was okay. And taking a swing at Garrett Nussmeier, I think, isn't an awful thing. And so looking at their draft, though, as a Broncos fan, I don't sit here and be like, dang, how did we let that guy go there? Which we've said about the Chiefs several years, right? Xavier, like, what are we doing? Like, Buffalo, stop trading your picks to them. Like, what are we doing here? The Raiders, I think, took advantage of sucking, when they finally were like, we're going to pick at the top of each round. And in doing so, that said, trading Stukes, 6-year senior, sure. I don't know, picking a safety that high for a team that had so many needs like that, I think you could have got a good player, a good safety later on and maximize. You needed talent. I think there were good receivers on the board, which they don't have. I like Zune as a center. I think the Gerard McCoy pick was the smartest pick of their draft outside of Fernando Mendoza. For the 4th round pick, if his knee works at all, he's the best corner in the draft, hands down. Mm-hmm. And for a team that is bleeding out like that, take a swing. That to me was stroke of genius. Mike Washington in the 4th round, I think is good. Mike Washington in the 2nd or 3rd round, I think would have been awful. So I think he's a guy at least that brings you some traits. But I don't look at anyone on their draft, even Fernando Mendoza. I hope that he's a good player because, to be honest, I want the Raiders to be like competent again to feel good about hating them. But again, I don't look at their draft and say like, how did we let them get him? Outside of McCoy, and like, to be honest, I know why he got there because he is broken. So yeah, that's my take, and then I'm just gonna run into the Chargers really quick. Cause I look at their draft and don't feel like, well, how did we let them get that guy? which makes me feel really, really good. I know that they're probably saying that about the Broncos, that's for sure. Which, to be honest, I would say that about the Broncos too. But
Sure.
They didn't have that draft. I think this year probably didn't have a ton of those guys in it at all. But I really wasn't a huge fan of a lot. I think Messidor is a good player. Should be able to come in and contribute right now. And, I don't think he's better than Garrett Bowles, which is the guy that will block him. Jake Slaughter is a good center prospect, but not a guy who I was even picking for the Broncos, who I wanted to get an interior offensive lineman. So, good. It was fine. But I don't feel like any of the teams closed the gap on the Broncos based on their draft class.
Yeah, I think what I like that the Chargers did is brought in guys that they think that can play now. I think Messidor
and offensive linemen.
Yeah, and offensive. I mean, Slaughter.
4 offensive linemen. Let's just
right. That's a Harbaugh for sure. There's that influence is there, and they've had a lot.
But we would have thought forever, like Justin Herbert, like that. You go as far as he goes, and the guy has gotten smashed like year after year.
Yeah,
and it's just like it's sad to watch, even as I enjoy it. It's a little like weird porn, But it's like, oh man, like if the draft is like a 40% hit rate, right, or whatever, 30.
Yeah.
You need offensive linemen. Go get as many as you can to protect the thing they are paying the most money to. If Justin Herbert is upright, you were a playoff team for sure. If anything happens to that guy, you're bottom 5 team. And I think them finally investing in that a little bit. I don't love the guys that they got though, so we'll see if that works. A whole bunch of interior offensive linemen and then a tackle from Memphis, but. The thought was what counted.
The tackle from Memphis is apparently 6'9" and like 325 pounds. The dude is
he's a big kid.
Yeah. So here's what I think is you got to credit Harbaugh for committing to the bit. Like he is, we're going to run the football. It's run first team. This is the way I build my teams, and it has worked for the majority of his career. So my thoughts are apparently I am way higher on the Chiefs draft than anybody else, and that's fine. I think Mansour Delane with McCoy's injury was the cornerback 1 and pretty clearly the quarterback 1.
Yeah,
Peter Woods I think is a good swing to take, especially in the late first round, because as Nick mentioned, he was a top 10 pick going into the last year. And I think Tom Allen, who is now the Clemson defensive coordinator, the story is that he asked Peter Woods to gain some weight and be more of a 1 technique, and that is not Peter Woods' skill set. So Peter Woods has since lost a whole bunch of weight and said, I'm going to be more of a 3 technique. So I am way higher on Peter Woods. I thought he was defensive tackle 1 in this class pretty easily. So I like both those 2 picks a lot. Our Mason Thomas nailed it, or JT nailed it with he's got a high motor, can rush the passer. I really like Jaden Kennedy, the slot corner from Oregon. He played corner slot or corner safety in college, and they kind of moved him around. So I think he's an interesting chess piece. And I can't tell you how much I love the swing on Garrett Nussmeier. Like, in a 7th round pick, that guy was probably either the 3rd or 4th best quarterback prospect in this class. And I know some people liked him as the 2 prospect. I think he has all the arm talent in the world. The problem is that Brian Kelly screwed him up bad the last 2 years. So also Brian Kelly killed a kid. Do not forget. So
don't ever forget. Brian Kelly is literally the worst.
Yeah.
I know Nussmeier too has had some significant injury history over this past year. Again, I think Brian Kelly is a ton to say for that. I like that too. I wish the Broncos would have taken a developmental quarterback. I think you never know. And I think Patrick Mahomes on notice. I think Big G Nuss, if you will. Is gonna come in and make a
stop it.
But I think you're a lot higher than most people are on the Kansas City draft, and I think that's because
on notice from a 7th round pick just came out of your mouth. Okay, cool.
I don't know. I don't know if I believe so much in if you have a quarterback about taking a quarter. I think I'd rather just sign a backup than try and develop a backup. I get it. I understand the value. I would take a swing on Nussmeier in the 7th round for sure. But I just don't know. Like if he pans out, then where are you? You know what I mean? Do you trade him? You're obviously not getting off of Mahomes. You know.
Yes, no, you trade him.
I'm just going to point out that Malik Willis just signed a 3-year, $30 million deal in Miami. So.
Yeah, but that wasn't the team. He didn't leave the team he got drafted to. He went to.
Well, the Titans are a wreck. That's why.
Well,
but
you know
I think the concept is there. I mean, look at the Patriots
from that.
Getting seconds for.
Yeah, I mean,
Matt
again,
Castle and Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think there's a legitimate market for taking a backup quarterback because Willis wasn't the starter in Green Bay either, but yet he still got this big deal because he performed well in limited time. So I think there's a market for it. Is all I'm saying. I'm not saying you're wrong.
I'd rather pay someone round 7 money to come be my backup than low starter end money. Garrett Stidham's making like $8 million a year. I'd rather pay Garrett Nussmeier's $900,000. Just saying. But is that a thing? I wouldn't draft him over a guy that I think can come play right now. No, I think that's fair.
Yeah, even like a special gamer,
Yeah. Anyway, so also the Raiders, I thought was fine. I love the Jamad McCoy pick, especially in the 4th round. Same with Mike Washington in the 4th round. I think both those are swing your swing type guys. I don't expect Mike Washington to get any playing time this year because Genty's in front of him. I like the Stooks pick. I like the Crawford pick. And I will give you a sneaky sleeper for the Raiders is Malik Benson. If that is not an Al Davis pick, I don't know what is because he's got speed on speed on speed. So don't sleep on Malik Benson. I really liked him in the 6th round. So, but again, I didn't love Mendoza. I didn't love Trey Zune even as a center. So I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
So, but that team's a train wreck. So let him be a train wreck.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to need some drafts. It does feel good though to look at the teams and none of them were the 2017 Saints draft, where it's just dang, you got studs. It's I mean, even if Fernando Mendoza hits, is he gonna be move to the 3rd best quarterback in the division?
He's Kirk Cousins. I mean, that's probably where his career ends up, and who's he's starting in front of him? Kirk Cousins. So
yeah.
They can open a Kohl's in Vegas together, and it'll be great. So good for them. All right,
good for them.
Right before we go, do we have any other favorite draft classes for the NFL? Who was a favorite? Who was a not favorite?
Oh man,
I can go if anybody.
Yeah, why don't you kick it off?
All right, so outside of the Chiefs, I really love the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and not just because I'm a Miami fan.
They're on my list.
Tampa Bay, Ruben Bain at 15 is just stealing, and he's going to make 10 other teams that passed on him regret it, namely the Miami Dolphins. I was a big Josiah Trotter fan, even coming out. I think he's just fantastic. I know Nick really liked Ted Hurst. I thought he was pretty good. Keontae Scott in the 4th round. I know he's kind of a quote unquote tweener that you don't know what to do with him, but Todd Bowles is a defensive coordinator, so I have high hopes for Keontae Scott being used correctly. So love Tampa Bay going forward. A draft I did not like was the Patriots. The Caleb Lomu pick in the 1st round, I totally don't get. He is a tackle-only prospect, and you have to bookend.
Has only played left tackle.
Right. So that means you're probably, in order to maximize his value, means you're going to kick Will Campbell inside to guard, which is a position he's never played before. So now you have a rookie left tackle and a guy starting at guard who's never played there. So that just does not make any sense to me. Pass
after one was the 4th pick in the draft, and I don't know. I actually really like Crownover in the 6th round better. I think he might have some chops to stick. I agree. Maybe if their coach was focused on coaching, they would have been more adept at it.
100%.
So I concur. I think I'll volley. I like the Saints draft.
I like the Saints draft too.
I think Jordan Tyson and Oscar Delp, I think is a really good, and Bryce Lance, Baron Brown. I think they got at least 2 of those guys will be long-term contributors, in my opinion. And I think Jordan Tyson with Chris Olave, that's nice. That's a nice pairing. Christian Miller, I think, was a defensive lineman I really liked for the Broncos. Lorenzo Styles Jr.
I think getting
Yes.
Shuck as many weapons as possible to find out if he's any
100%.
good, I think is the right draft strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't feel like any of them were overkill or outside of outside of where they could have been. I think another draft that I kind of like for some weird reason. I like the Colts. I like CJ Allen and AJ Halsey. I think that those two picks back to back for defense was really good. I think Jalen Farmer has a chance to be a contributor in the next couple of years. Bryce Botchicher, I think they got him a little earlier than I would have liked, but I think he's the guy that's going to contribute. Seth McGowan was one of my favorite 7th round picks. I think a running back that has shown some chops in the SEC in the 7th round. I bet he'll be on the team for a bit. Why not? I do like Caden Curry. I think he's got some nice tools for them. So I thought with no 1st round pick, kind of give them some kudos. I thought that they did a good. I think they did a good job. And then lastly, actually, no. I'm going to leave it there. JT, what do you got? Who'd you like?
I don't think it's very popular. I kind of like the Steelers draft. I thought it was an interesting draft class. I think I'm higher on Max Ihanacher than a lot of guys. He's super athletic tackle, like obviously a position of need for them. Jeremy Bernard, I just think they took like solid football players, guys that they can come out and play next year. And I think that they need guys like that. Drew Aller, I think, is a good risk to take. I don't know that he's going to pan out per se, but coming into summer scouting, he was a guy that was going to be potentially a top quarterback prospect. Obviously didn't have the season that they wanted to have, but a guy that I would take a risk on. They came up with Jennings Dunker in the 3rd round, Dalen Everett in the 3rd round, which I think are both good players. Even Caden Wetjen, wide receiver, Iowa in 4th round. I think at the very worst, you're getting a really good special teams guy. I don't know. I think in Heidenreich, I just think is an interesting pick. I don't know that he's going to turn into anything. They're running back out of Navy.
I really like that one. I think he's a good football player. That
I think so too.
And obviously, being from academy school, I think he's going to be a guy that whatever needs to get done, and in those roles, I like that. I think that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
boys, I have to bail right now. So I love you both. It was good to talk to you.
Yep. Hey, just I wanted to say, Cowboys, they did all right. They did.
Caleb Downs, best player in the draft. You heard it.
I mean, he's not. Let's see. So maybe let's go. Do you have a couple of your favorite picks? Do a couple of those, and then I know we'll get out of here.
Favorite picks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fit, whatever that might be, value, however you want to grade it.
Well, I'll give you a draft class I didn't like because I hadn't done that yet.
Let's do that.
I don't really like the Eagles draft. I'm okay with the Mekhi Lemon pick. I don't know that that's a good receiver for them.
For that team? Nope.
Yeah, just because he's such a technical route runner, a guy you line up in the slot. He's not a down the field guy. And Jalen Hurts is a guy that they like to throw it down the field, man. Like he likes to throw it on the outside. I'll be interested to see how that works out for them. Stowers, I think, has some upside as a playmaker, but again, like limited pass protection guy, not a guy that you're really going to count on to block very much. He was a guy that I wanted the Broncos to stay away from too early for that reason. And then I just kind of look at the other ones. I do like the Cole Wisniewski pickup in the 7th round. I think that he can be a ball player, a special teamer at the very least. But that's a team that I wasn't super impressed with.
I agree. And even to trade up to go get him in front of Dallas, I think it's a lesser version of Devonta Smith, and you got Wicks. I think that wouldn't have been the player that I would have picked for them for sure. Another draft class that I am, how do they say that I am mid on, if you will. I thought it's hard because I like some of the players that they got, but don't know why they did it.
Yeah,
is the Packers.
Yeah,
The Packers outside of Dennis Sutton, who I really liked. I mean, Edgar Burton, Damani Jackson, I think there wasn't much there. I thought Chris McClellan, I wasn't a huge fan of his, and especially in the third round. I thought he was a guy that didn't really produce to where he could have been at or where he should have been at.
Sure.
But that's kind of low hanging fruit. I think my because you hit it on the head, like the New England pick or the New England draft was just awful. Is the Jets, and David Bailey, I've come around on that. I think he's a good player.
I think he's a good player.
Kenan Sadiq is a great athlete, but they just got Mason Taylor, who I think is a really, really good player. So I don't know. Are you really gonna run 12 personnel, which I don't think is in the cards based on who they have, and more just the first round. Like, I really like Omar Cooper Jr. I love D'Angelo Pons and I love Daryl Jackson. Like, I like those guys. I don't see the vision yet, and I hopefully will, because it's like you got really big D tackle, a really light edge rusher. How is that going to fit? But that's here nor there-ish. Like what Washington did. I think Sonny Styles, good pick. Antonio Williams, I think, is a good player. Keatron Allen and Josephs, I think, are good pulls. Another team that I wasn't a fan of, I don't know, Atlanta. I mean, Avion Terrell, like, that's a super dope story.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sky Branch, like, really undersized guy, sure, but Daniels, Thompson, Perkins, maybe, I think at 6 isn't bad, but they didn't really get any contributors, and they're not. I don't think they're as close to being really, really good as maybe their draft indicated. Same with Minnesota. Caleb Banks in the first round at all, I think I wasn't a fan of. So that one to me was like a huge concern, to just strike out and whiff on your first pick, just like the Rams. Go get Ty Simpson at 13. Ugh. Max Clare, who I think is a really good player, but you just have Ferguson. Like, you have the most stacked tight end room in the league, probably. Keegan Toast, like, that's your CJ Daniels, the older prospect receiver. Like, just wasn't great. And again, these are teams that are really, really good, and they might not. But yeah, I think the Steelers got better players than maybe they got credit for. But I think it's the culmination of getting your pick stolen. And then you kind of rebound. Bernard, like, as a real contributor. Aller, like, you're drafting a guy in the third round. Why? Like, you're not going to get a starter in the third round. And if so, are you really that good that you don't need contributors, right? Getting Dunker, I think, later on, like, you risked Dalen, Everett, and Dunker to get Drew Aller, who, I don't know. I think a lot of teams, it felt like, tried to outsmart themselves a bit, and they really just didn't need to let the board fall. San Francisco is another one of those, scribbling. At the top of the second. Kalen Black in the third round, guy with limited physical skill set, ton of mileage already. Just felt like, guys, we got too smart. It's like they got to make the perfect pick as opposed to just going to get, who is in front of them. And so, what about the same be said about the Broncos? What was your take? Summarize the whole draft for me. How would you, in a word or sentence, like, give me your feel for the, how would you describe 2026?
I think that I don't think anyone came away with a really terrible draft class. I think that it was a well-balanced group. We kind of, the thing I maybe noticed more this year than I do other years, and it's always there, but the runs and where the runs are happening for certain positioning groups felt a little bit different this year. It felt a little more, I don't want to say scripted, but predictable, right? Like, I think that we had a good feel
for sure. That's good. Mm-hmm.
Like when linebackers started to go, it was like, oh yeah, all these guys that we know are second day guys are probably going to get snatched up here before the Broncos, they get to the Broncos. And so in that way, it felt maybe it's something that I'm kind of learning as we do more draft coverage stuff, is maybe a little more well known in NFL circles when these runs are going to happen. You know, I think that the prevailing feeling a lot of times is like, oh, someone takes a guy and then someone else takes a guy and then the run starts. But I think that maybe it's a little more predictable than that at times. When you're kind of comparing notes around the league. So that was interesting.
That's good. I think that's good.
That was the thing that I took away, I think, this year.
Yeah, I think it was the wait till next year draft. I think there wasn't a lot to be excited about. And I think, to be honest, I think every fan base probably feels that way. There were some good picks, I think, throughout, and some good classes. Again, I really like what Tampa did. But does their draft, like in Tampa, are they like, oh man, now we got like this draft? And like I don't think that there was that much of a excitement feel. Anyone leaving the draft feeling like our team is significantly better today than we were yesterday. Maybe deeper. Maybe everyone feels like they got some depth and maybe some core players to kind of move, but not a ton of game changers and a lot to be excited about. And I think that happens when your QB class is kind of whack. So
I think
next year,
that's a good takeaway too. I think that's true, that it maybe felt a little bit more like people were picking for need as opposed to best player available because of that. Because maybe that's why the classes don't feel like there was a big winner and a big loser. Because a lot of years there's like, we know 1 to 150 are going to be guys who can contribute. Well, this year it was like maybe 1 to 65, and so after that it's like, okay, what do we need? Who fits what we do? And people drafted a lot more that way, I feel like, than it was like, we took Jahdae Barron last year, probably a position that we didn't really need to prioritize, but the guy was just so good that we wanted him. But there was not really any scenario like that this year that really happened. Even at 32, Seattle taking a running back. I like the pick because I like Jadarian Price, but that felt like a need pick, not necessarily best player available pick. So it's just interesting how it fell that way this year. Yeah. And I think that was just, I think it was kind of understood at the beginning of the draft season, especially once these quarterbacks kind of all started to tumble. It was like, all right, well, maybe this draft class is going to be a little more fill the need, find guys that you like that play a style or a system that you like, and try and target those as opposed to best player available and potentially taking out of need or taking a position that you don't need because you love the guy. Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good point. All right. Well, I appreciate you staying long so that I could jump on. Appreciate everyone staying in, hanging with us and doing some talk. And I know we will be back at it again next week. Hey, and I just want to, I agree. Also, if he hits, he's going to hit big, I think. I actually kind of like the Vikings draft class. It's kind of fun. They just we're like, let's just get as much beef as possible. And we'll get the biggest defensive tackle. Then we'll get a nose tackle. Then we'll get a, big offensive guard. Then we'll get a linebacker. It's like they were just like, let's just fill up the trenches. Anyways. Yeah. Thank you everyone for being here. We appreciate you. We're going to call it a day. But be kind to one another. Be safe out there. And if you need a sports prescription, ask a doctor.